Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kyle Watts. So today we're taking a look at the Sony ZV-E10, and I'm going to show you my favorite 10 accessories that I use almost every day with this camera. So about a year ago, I put out an accessory video for this camera. If you haven't watched that, you can't watch that one up here. But since then, there's been some new products that have come out, some new things that I've tested, and some new things that I've just kind of switched to. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at the top favorite accessories for this camera that I use almost every day. So I'm going to start this list today with probably the one I use the most, all the way down to the one I use the least. All right, so just to let you know, we will be doing a giveaway for a brand new SMALLRIG cage with the grip. So stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can sign up for that. All right, so the one thing that I really dislike the most about this camera is that the grip on this camera is awful. It's a really shallow grip, it's not comfortable, there's no contours. This body's plastic. Pretty much if you drop this camera, it could crack because it's a plastic camera. So the one thing that I got pretty much day one once it came out was the SMALLRIG cage with the grip handle. So this cage is really lightweight. It adds a protection all the way around the camera. And the most important thing is it gives you a really nice grip with a little contour in it. All you have to do with this thing is pretty much just pop this thing straight in, take the screw out on the bottom, screw this thing in. All right, so they do also give you this little tool at the bottom you can just put in there. It's magnetic, so you can just leave it there. So now on this camera, you have a really big silicone substantial grip, and you have protection now all the way around the camera. And this thing's starting to feel a lot more like a real camera. In fact, the grip on this thing feels very similar to my Sony a7S III, which we're shooting on right now. So this isn't just a protection for the camera and a grip. If you look on the sides here and on the top, there's actually different mounting points. So if you want to mount this thing as a vertical video camera now, you can put that right on a tripod, flip up your screen, and now you have a vertical video on a tripod. And then there are different mounting points on the bottom, so if you are going to screw anything to it, you can do that. So this cage does not get in the way of the battery door. It opens and closes just fine. There is a cold shoe on the bottom, and there is a cold shoe on the top. So one other really cool feature on this camera cage, you can't really see it necessarily at first, but at the bottom here, this is actually a built-in Arca Swiss plate. So you don't have to add any like mounting points to this thing if you use Arca Swiss, which is on most tripods. All you have to do is just put this cage on, slip it in a tripod and tighten it down, and it's good to go. That is a huge feature that I wish they would put on every single camera cage, because on my tripods, pretty much all of them are Arca Swiss. So then you don't have to have a weird thing on there, and now it sits flat, which is awesome. So if there's anything you take away from this video at all, is that my #1 accessory for this camera is the SMALLRIG camera cage with the silicone grip. Also, if you do look at the top here, there are some mounting points so that if you want to mount a handle on the top, you can get some handles from SMALLRIG as well. Now you have a top handle that you can use to use the camera. This is a nice feature if you're doing a lot of like B-roll, because then you can just kind of keep steady. So if you want to get the handle, it's not part of the kit. It is an add-on accessory. I'll try to find the link for that. By the way, I will put the links below in the description for every product in the video. The camera cage itself does come in at $49. Right now, I think it's actually on sale for $39. And I believe this handle might have been like $39 or $40 as well. All right, so moving on to my second accessory. This one's pretty much something I've used almost every single day with all of my cameras, and that is the ULANZI MT47. This model is the Arca Swiss plate only. There is another model called the MT46. That model has a kind of quick release system. Right now, I think the MT47 is on back order, so if you're looking at this video right away, you might not find this online until it's available again. But the MT46 is available, and that is like a quick release system. You can go check that out as well. The one thing I like about this the most is it's a substantial handheld tripod. It is not flimsy, it's not plastic. It does have a little bit of heft to it, but pretty much you can slide this now in, because you have this cage, you can slide this straight into this thing, and now it's ready to go. What I really like about this the most is that it's a kind of a heavy duty tripod. It has the ball head on, so you can angle this thing whatever way you want, so you can do some vlogging. But the coolest thing about this one is it does extend out, so you can get a 15 inches away from you and the camera, so that you can really get that wide angle shot that you want to get using something like this. Unlike some of those other tripods out there, when you do extend out the thing, if they're not heavy duty, they kind of bounce, they wiggle. They're not really great for holding big cameras. Those other ones are good for holding things like the ZV-1. But if you're using something with bigger weight, bigger heavy lenses, this is a great tripod. I've personally used this with my Sony a7S III with a 2-pound Sigma 2470 lens with my monitor on top. But also this thing is a little tripod, so you can set this down on the ground and you can aim it. There is a little cold shoe on the side if you want to mount a microphone there if you want. But honestly, this is my go-to for my handheld tripod. I've ditched the Joby 5K altogether. I've gone with this. One thing I will note too is that if you're sitting down on a table, if you put this thing all the way up, this is actually a really good thing for eye level. This is the tripod that I use on all my live streams as well. So moving on to the next thing that I use with this camera the most, and that is different lenses. The one that I've just recently started using is the Tamron 17 to 70. So what I most like about this lens is that it has a really good range, all the way from 17 to 70. That's really gonna be good for, like, 17 is gonna be good for those wide angle shots, and 70 is gonna be good for just filming stuff from afar. So I just got back from New York City where I just took this lens and this camera and we just did like a huge POV photography shoot. So if you want to see what this camera with this lens is capable of doing with photos and some video examples, subscribe down below. Make sure you don't miss that video. Hit that bell for notifications too, because then you'll get notified when I put out that video. But that one will be coming soon. But this lens really surprised me a lot on how much I like this lens. It is kind of an expensive lens. It comes in at $750, so you are looking at kind of the price of the camera. But if you want a lens that's gonna be really good for this camera, I would highly recommend this. And the other thing I like about this is it's an f2.8, which means it's gonna be really good at low light and it's gonna give you that blurry background when you're using this lens. And then the other really big thing about this lens I like, why I'm gonna recommend this and these other lenses more than any other one, is this one has a thing called VC, which is vibration control. It's similar to Sony's OSS, which is a stabilized feature inside of the lens. So when you're using this camera, if you go to the stabilization section, you'll notice that it says off, standard, and active. Standard is only going to work if you have lenses that are stabilized. So this lens is stabilized, which means it works, and it works great. So you don't have to use that active stabilization. You can just use the standard stabilization, because the active punches in like 40%, and it does work well, but it crops in so far that vlogging with a 17 looks terrible. It's super zoomed in, and it's not gonna work well. So the 17 to 70 stabilized lens, I would highly recommend taking a look at that. And like I said before, check out videos coming on that soon. My other two most used lens with this camera is the Sony 10 to 18 lens. This lens is literally blew me away when I first got it. This is also in a kind of an expensive lens, but if you're planning on using this camera for a long period of time, highly recommend getting this one. That 10mm is super wide. And it's a stabilized lens, so you can still use that standard stabilization. That 10mm will give you that really wide look, so you can get more of your background in the photo. It is an f4 lens, so you're not getting quite the blur, but really you're not going to get a lot of like depth of field blur with a wide angle lens anyways. But there are some other 10mm and 11mm options out there from Sony that they just put out. But I still like this one better because it just looks better. It has that better range to it. Its stabilization works really well. And you can probably find these used sometimes for cheaper. So this one comes in brand new, I think at like $690. Like I said, if you can find it used, pick that up that way. And lastly, the lens that I've been using with my like aps-c Sony cameras forever is the Sony 18 to 105. If you're only gonna have one lens ever and that's it, I would get this one, 100%. 18, fairly wide, you can still vlog with it, you just have to make sure you're holding it a little further away from you. That 105, that's a really good distance away from you. It's all power zoom, so that little zoom rocker on the front of your camera will work with this lens, which is really cool. But this lens just has such a really cool, dreamy look. I do have another video on this if you want to check it out. That one will be up here as well. But yeah, Sony 18 to 105. This thing also comes in at about $650. But keep in mind, when you guys are buying lenses, this is going to be what makes your camera look different and give you the ability to have those different ranges and looks. So they are going to be expensive. If you guys are ever planning on moving up to full frame cameras, I would maybe look at some of the full frame option lenses instead, so that way you could future proof yourself for those other cameras. But if you're going to stay with the aps-c line, these lenses are the ones I would recommend the most. All right, so the next thing I would highly recommend getting for this camera, and that is an external microphone. So let's just ditch this little fuzzy thing on top here. So the microphone I really like the most, especially for this camera, that is the Rode VideoMic Go 2. This thing just came out recently. It's fairly small, it is really light, and quite honestly, this thing sounds a lot like the microphone I'm using right now in my studio, which is 2.5 times more expensive. This one is $99. This thing is my probably favorite product that came out this year. So this little mic you can just put right on top of here, or if you have the cage, you can put it on the top of the cage as well. All you have to do is just put it on top here and plug this thing into the side. And then all you'd have to do is just go into your volume settings in the camera, talk to the camera, and then change it until it gets to about like -12. That's where I set my microphones at. That way you'll give enough headroom if you clip But this is probably my favorite mic that came out this year. I've been using this mic quite a bit, even with all my other cameras, because this thing's an easier option to just use out and about, and it doesn't require any batteries, so you never have to charge this thing. So take a look at this one. I also do have a video for this one. I'll try to put that one up here as well. So as you can see, this microphone sits pretty well on top here. It's not too big. It's just a perfect size for this camera. And it sounds good. That's the most important part. And if you are planning to use this microphone outside, you can get the little dead cat from Rode as well. This is called the WS12. And then you just slip that on there instead of the foam one, and you'll get no wind noise when you're outside. So the next accessory is something I use literally every single time I go outside, and that is a variable ND filter. The one I personally use the most is the POLARPRO Peter McKinnon variable ND filter. So what you want to do with these filters is you put them on the end of your lens so that when you go outside on really bright days, you can still use those low apertures like f2.8, f1.4, whatever lens you have. And then you can actually control how dark and how much light comes into the camera by turning this, which allows either less light or more light in. And this effectively darkens what comes into your camera, kind of like sunglasses do on your eyeballs. So this is how you keep that look of that lens while having proper exposure by going outside. If you want to know more about this specific one, I do have a video on this one up here. This specific filter does come in at $299. I would recommend always picking like an 82 millimeter and then just get step down adapter rings for the certain lenses you have. So if you have like a 67 millimeter thread, you would get like an 82 to a 67, and then you can put that on that lens. Just get the biggest one filter wise that you can get for the biggest lens you have. You don't want to buy more than one of these. You want to use one and use them for all your lenses. There is another cheaper option out there from a company called Freewell. That one is like $100, so I would recommend that one if you don't want to spend $300 on this. But I do not regret this purchase at all. I bought this about 2 years ago. I'm still using this thing every day. So if you want to spend a little bit more money and get a little bit better of a product, get this one. But if you want to spend $100, the Freewell one is the one I would probably get as well. So while we're talking about microphones, the one product that did come out this year that I'm also like obsessed with, that is the DJI wireless mic kit. This thing is kind of expensive. It's like $329. But if you are looking for like a wireless microphone setup, this is hands down the one I'm recommending. It comes with an awesome little receiver, a transmitter, 2 mics so you can mic 2 different people in stereo or dual mono. These things, they personally record itself. So if you want to literally just use this as like a field recorder and hit the record button, now we're recording and I can talk to this microphone and pull this thing off into my computer later and get those files. But what you would normally use that for is just as a backup track in case you lost reception or something. I'm not going to go too far into this one, but there is a video on this one as well on my channel. Go check that out. But the DJI wireless mic kit is a brilliant wireless kit. I would highly recommend taking a look at this if you are looking for wireless itself. But I use this thing quite a bit with my cameras, including this camera as well. So that brings us to number 7, which is the ZHIYUN Crane M3 gimbal. This gimbal is pretty much my favorite gimbal for this camera. It's kind of the perfect size for it. This is really going to give you the ability to get those really buttery smooth footage, whether you're walking, doing vlogging, or if you're just doing crazy B-roll, or you're trying to shoot some like really cinematic stuff. So this thing will get you that perfect steadiness and smoothness that you're looking for. You can put some pretty good weight on the top here. If you have really long lenses that are heavy, those are probably going to struggle or not work with this thing. But this gimbal will be a perfect setup for people who are using like the kit lens or the 10-18 or like the Sigma 16 or even a few other lenses that aren't going to be really front heavy. I also do use this gimbal on my full frame Sony cameras with some bigger lenses too. Some of those don't actually balance, but they still work once you turn the gimbal on. So one really cool thing about this gimbal is that you can actually pack this thing down really small. You can get this thing into backpacks without taking a lot of room. And that's one real big reason why I would recommend this one, because it is easier to travel with. And if you can't travel with it, you're probably not going to use it as much. So take a look at this one. It's $369. So one real quick thing about this gimbal that I don't like is that the connection cables they give you with this set don't work with the ZV-E10. That's not because of the gimbal, that's because of the ZV-E10. They just didn't set this thing up to work with like gimbals. There is supposed to be a Bluetooth control module that comes with this gimbal that I don't know if ever came out, but Bluetooth connection is the only way to like get the start and stop and the zoom to work with this camera. So unfortunately, gimbals aren't going to work with that in this camera. If you do want to see more about this camera and this gimbal, I do have another video. Check that one out up here as well. All right, so the next accessory I'm going to show you is one that I used every day when I was in New York City doing this photo shoot, and that is the Peak Design wrist strap. These things just come with the little anchor on the bottom of the camera that you can put on the cage if you have the cage, and then you just push that in and it's clipped in. Now you have a really good wrist strap that will tighten if someone tries to grab your camera and run around. That was what I was most worried about in New York, was having this really expensive setup and then having someone like snatch the camera out of my hand and run away. They do have a couple different colors. They have a gray one, a black one. So go check that out. These are like $35. It's not really a fancy wow factor accessory, but so if you guys are looking for a wrist strap, I would check out this one because you can just kind of take them off and on really easily. One kind of cool feature about this thing is while you're wearing it, if you take it off your camera, there's a magnet and a metal plate. So if you actually just bring this thing up, it'll magnet itself. And now you just kind of have like a wristband while you're waiting to clip it back on your camera. So the next accessory, something I used every single day when we were in New York doing our photo shoot series, and that is the Peak Design capture clip. So what you want to do with this thing is you want to take this capture clip and sandwich it around your backpack strap so that it's on there. You just actually screw these things on and it just goes around the strap. And then you take the provided Arca Swiss plate that they give you with the camera, and then all you gotta do is just snap this thing down and it just sits there and hangs. There is a lock switch so you can turn it. Now this thing's never coming off. But when I was walking around, I didn't want to carry that camera all the time, so I just clipped it onto the backpack and it made life really easy. I first thought these things were a little dorky when they first came out. I didn't want to be that guy with a camera on my backpack. But man, when you're walking 30 miles around the city throughout 3 days, this thing was an absolute savior to have. So go check out the capture clip if you guys are doing a lot of like hiking and vlogging. This thing will save a lot of hassle of having to put it in and out of your backpack all the time. This thing comes in at $75, and I will honestly say that it was worth every penny having this on my backpack. And then speaking of backpacks, this is not my next accessory, but this is the Peter McKinnon version 2 backpack. I'm quite a big fan of that one as well. So the last accessory that I'm going to recommend is to get yourself like a good travel tripod, or a tripod that you're just going to use every day, whether it's in your studio or just kind of going down to the park that you want to get. The two that I'm going to show you right now are what I recommend. So the one that I have been using for a really long time is the newer 66-inch carbon fiber one. This thing's a really good tripod. It's pretty light and it's really tall. So you're actually going to get above eye level for most people, which was important for me because I never had a tripod before that was above eye level. So I always had to kind of duck when I went up to the camera. This thing was a really good thing. You can fit this thing in most backpacks. Pretty lightweight. I think right now this is on sale for like $94. So highly recommend taking a look at this one. Link in the description as well. So the next tripod I'm going to recommend looking at is the Shure T025SK. That's what this one's called. There's a few different versions of this one, but this is the one I just recently picked up. So this is a 53-inch tripod when it's fully extended. When it's packed down, you can see it's about a 14-inch tripod. This thing is smaller than my Joby 5K, so this thing fits really well into the side of the backpack. This thing is super light, and it is a very durable tripod. I really fascinated and surprised about this. I will be doing probably a more dedicated video just for this tripod. This thing was awesome on my trip. Hardly noticed that I had it in my bag when I wasn't needing it, and when I did need it, it was there. It is a 53-inch tripod, so you are talking about something that's a little shorter than some of the other tripods, but if you're out traveling, chances are you're probably not needing an eye-level tripod necessarily. You're just needing a tripod that you could set down and get a good fixed shot for time lapses or long exposure, things like that. This thing was about $220 when I bought it. There are a couple other versions of this one. There's the metal version, and then there's another one called like the T5, I think. Those ones are like $100 and some, so those are cheaper options, but I do not regret one bit paying $219 for this because this thing fits really perfectly in that backpack and it's super light. Alright, you guys, so that is my favorite 10 accessories for the Sony ZV-E10. Do check out all the links in the descriptions down below for any of these things. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm giving away a brand new cage from SMALLRIG. That's this one with the silicone grip. So if you want to enter in this giveaway, what you're going to need to do is like this video, subscribe to this channel, and then comment down below that you want this cage. Literally write, I want this cage. And then we're just gonna pick through the comments here and find out who's gonna win this cage. So I'll be announcing the winner of this cage in about a month. So you'll have plenty of time to sign up and get ready to win this cage. And just to let you guys know, I'm only gonna be shipping this product inside the USA. So if you guys live outside of the United States, I'm sorry. But if you do live in the USA, please just comment down below and good luck. Anyways, though, if you have any other questions on any of these products, please leave me a comment down below. I will get back to you on that. Once again, if you do like this video, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along to more ZV-E10 content. And like I said before, I do have a huge video coming up on photography using this camera and this lens, pretty much this whole setup. So follow along to that. And as always, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Later.